Welcome back. After watching the TED video with students, I like to spend some time thinking about it with them. In particular, I like to focus on the phrase common sense revolts. Having already talked about the history of copyright, it's not difficult for students to see that as technology has changed in the past, copyright changed with it. But in the current regime of copyright, things have not been changing properly. For the rest of this video, we'll talk a little about how to get students to move from the philosophical or theoretical ideas about copyright to practical considerations about how to use copyright in their own work. In Larry Lessig's book Free Culture, he argues that fair use has changed significantly. In its original conception, it was designed for a very specific set of circumstances and uses. But because the digital age allows us to do so many more things, people have put a very heavy burden on fair use, particularly in an educational context. It's not at all unusual to have an educator or a student do pretty much anything they like with copyright material and then claim it's educational fair use and they can do what they've done. One of the things that I do encourage students to do if they're going to use copyrighted material in student work is to use the standard rules for evaluating fair use and then to rigorously cite everything. The problem is that even under educational fair use, that art then becomes useless for any other context. Most of the students at Columbia College Chicago, where I teach, are budding artists of some sort. Often they want to be able to use the art they produce in my class in other places. But if they've relied on educational fair use to include copyrighted material in that art, they will not be able to do so. So one thing I've started working on with my students is understanding other ways to find work that you can adapt or co-opt or alter in your own work that will be able to be used beyond the scope of the classroom. Larry Lessig's key idea for this is the Creative Commons. Creative Commons is a system by which individuals can license their copyrighted material to be used in more flexible ways than the traditional copyright allows. Essentially, it's preemptive permission to use the work in a variety of ways. By giving students access to and knowledge about Creative Commons resources, I help students make art that will be able to extend beyond the classroom. We then also hold a conversation about what students really believe about intellectual property, what they believe people should be able to do, and whether they want to consider using Creative Commons as they license their own work and distribute it online and other places. There are lots of other things you can do with students to talk about copyright. One thing I haven't covered in this video at all is copyright terms. Usually I'll spend upwards of an hour with students talking about how copyright works, what you have to do to get copyright on a work, how long copyright lasts, and often this is a sort of moment of divination for them. After they've discovered that they hold contradictory ideas about intellectual property and sampling and sharing, then they often discover that copyright itself is really draconian and that they don't believe or agree with the terms that it uses. There are lots of reasons to spend time with students talking about copyright. If they know about the philosophy and history of intellectual property, they're more likely to respect copyright or protest it ethically. Knowing the history of copyright is also essential for students who decide to pursue internet activism or other forms of protest against the current copyright regime. As a humanities professor, I also believe that studying copyright has an educational benefit beyond the scope of just the subject matter. Exploring and dissecting their own contradictory beliefs is a powerful process that gives students skills in rational analysis and debate. I believe that learning about copyright will help make your students better scholars, artists, and even better people. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for your time, and I look forward to your comments.